We're up to page 22. We're up to Eizehu Mekoman. This is more like a study, a learning. It's the 5th chapter of Zvachim, first chapter in the order of holiness, of sacrifices. And because it says we made a blessing on the Torah, and it says that every day you should learn the Torah, the Mishnah, and the Gemara. So that's why they chose, we learned earlier, we read every morning first from the Torah. The Torah says about the sacrifices. So we read the Torah portion about the sacrifices, and now we're going to read the Mishnah, the oral Torah. It teaches us about the sacrifices, and then he's going to conclude with the opening of Torah's Kohanim, Rabbi Shmuel Omer, which covers the Gemara. So every day, a Jew gets, even those who are not learned, or those who don't have the opportunity to learn, every day a Jew should get the opportunity to learn Torah, to fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah, the written Torah, the oral Torah, as well as the Mishnah, and specifically, and the Gemara. The reason why they chose this particular chapter is because in this chapter there's no argument. It's very rare, not impossible, it's very rare to find in the entire tractate, in all the tractates, all the Mishnayot, the 60 Mishnayot, it's very hard, or more than 60 Mishnayot, it's very hard to find an entire chapter without a single argument. Here we have an entire chapter, such an essential halaws, without a single argument, even though some of the things that he's going to mention are actually an argument, and not according to everyone, but explicitly he doesn't mention any argument. Like everyone is on the same page, and from the language we'll see that this happens to be like a very ancient Mishnayos, almost word for word, the way Moshe Rabbeinu must have heard it from Sinai, the way Moshe taught the oral Torah. So this Mishnayos, this particular chapter, must have been transmitted right away, because right away they had to know how to offer the sacrifice. So Moshe must have transmitted this, and it's almost the original language, faithful to the original language, because he's going to say that you eat certain sacrifices you can eat within the curtains. The curtains, the only times he had curtains was in the tabernacle, in the desert. So the courtyard was surrounded by curtains, and that's the language that he uses. So this is like an ancient text that goes faithful all the way back to the origin of the oral Torah, right at the beginning, Moshe at Sinai. So that's why they chose this. This chapter is unique about this chapter, and also, more importantly, there may be some other chapters that don't have any argument, but this is all about sacrifices, which is the whole theme of prayer. Prayer is a substitute for sacrifices. So it makes sense, if we're choosing to study Torah, we should study something that relates to prayer, which is the sacrifice. But because this is really in order to fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah, that's why it's so essential. What we're about to do now is so essential. Many people go through the entire life and read this chapter without really understanding a single word of what they're saying. These are laws. You're learning Torah. The difference between the written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah, you fulfill the obligation even if you don't understand. That's why every Jew is called up to the Torah and makes a blessing. How can you make a blessing when you don't understand a word that you're about to read? You called up to the Torah, you get an aliyah, and you called up to the Torah, and you make a blessing. But I don't understand a word, it doesn't matter. You're reading the Torah, the written Torah, even if you don't understand, your soul understands, and you can make a blessing. The oral Torah, however, you can't do that. If you didn't yet make the blessing of Torah in the morning, you can't open up a page of Talmud and read it without understanding a single word and make a blessing on the Torah, because it's not called learning. The oral Torah, you have to learn it. It has to engage your mind. You have to understand what you're learning. So if we're reading this chapter and also Rabbi Shmuel Omer, because we want to fulfill the mitzvah of studying Torah, it's essential that we learn this. We understand what we're saying every single morning. So what we're about to do is very key. The davening, it doesn't matter so much. Davening, as long as I know in general, I'm davening to Hashem. I have a general understanding of what I'm saying. That's fine. Of course, it's not enough. You want to understand every word. You want to understand in depth. And that's why we're learning the Siddur. But when it comes to learning, it's not enough. I really have to understand what I'm saying. Otherwise, it defeats the whole purpose. Okay, so let's go right into it. So the Mishnah starts out, Eizehu Mekoman shel Zvachim. Where is the place of sacrifice? They have to offer a sacrifice. But where exactly? So he says, Kodshei Kodashim, the holy of holies. There are 3 different categories of sacrifices. There's Kodshei Kodashim, holy of holies, and then you have Kodshei Kalim, you have light sacrifices that are not as holy. Every sacrifice is holy, but it's Kodshei Kalim. And you have Kodshei Kodashim. For example, a sin offering, a guilt offering, a burnt offering. These are all in the category of Kodshei Kodashim, holy of holies. And therefore they're much stricter. And as we're going to learn now, he's going to explain how this expresses itself. So these are called Kodshei Kodashim. And in a broader sense, a deeper sense, these sacrifices are to achieve an atonement. A sin offering, a guilt offering, even the burnt offering also achieves an atonement. But there the Torah doesn't spell out openly that it's Kodshei Kodashim. But a sin offering and a guilt offering, the Torah says clearly it's Kodshei Kodashim. Mitzvahs are Kodesh, are holy. In the blessing of the mitzvah we say, Kiddushanu b'mitzvahs. You sanctified us with the mitzvahs, through the mitzvahs. A mitzvah makes us holy. What if a person sinned and you did not do the mitzvah, or you violated the mitzvah? So in order to make up for it, I have to go deeper. I have to have Kodshei Kodashim. I have to reach into a level of holiness that has the ability to restore the Kodshim that's defective, the level of Kodshim that I affected negatively. So now I have to reach into a much deeper level, Kodshei Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, in order to restore and make it right again, to restore the Kodshim. He said, Kodshei Kodashim, Shchitasan Batzafen. Where is the place in the temple do you slaughter these sacrifices? This is only in the northern side of the altar. Between the northern side and the northern wall of the courtyard, and then from the temple all the way to from the western wall of the temple all the way to the antechamber before the temple, all the way till the eastern wall of the courtyard. So that whole space, that's where you can slaughter the sacrifice. And also the kohen who's slaughtering also has to be there and stand there. So first he starts out in general. Where do you slaughter it? In Tzafin, in the northern side. Now, on one hand, the north represents something negative. It says in the prophets that the enemy will attack you from the north. Because in the Temple Mount, the other sides, the southern side, and the western side, and the eastern side, the mountain slopes. They're slopes, so it's protected. The north, you don't have that slope. So the north is vulnerable. The north is the Achilles heels. That's where the enemy could attack. So the north represents the negative energy. And that's where sin comes from. So the atonements, the Kodshei Kodashim, the Holy of Holies, the sin offering and the guilt offering, and even the burnt offering also achieves an atonement for sins of omission. The guilt offering and the sin offering, and the guilt offering and the sin offering is for sins of commission, if you violate a prohibition. The burnt offering achieves an atonement for sins of omission, if you did not fulfill a positive commandment, or a prohibition where the Torah gives you an out that you can mend it and rectify it through doing a mitzvah. So for that type of sin, which is a lighter sin, then the burnt offering achieves an atonement for that. So the place that you're focusing is on the northern side, because that's where the place of sin is. But on the positive side, the north represents Gevurah, but Gevurah literally means strength. For example, like rain, it's called Gevurah. Gevurah is Geshamim. It's intense. It's very powerful. But that's the source of life. Without water, there is no life. But the Gevurah expresses itself in the fact that it comes down in raindrops. Instead of coming down like during the flood, a sheet of rain, that would destroy the world. So Gevurah means it breaks it down. It breaks it down. Each drop is separated from the other drop. But even that is an act of kindness, because it allows you to receive the rain. If it was one sheet of rain coming down from heaven, it would completely obliterate and destroy the world. You would have another flood. Also, we talk about blood. Blood is dam, is gevurah, strength. But blood is life, it's vitality, it's energy, it's life. As it says, if a person lives for 80 years, it says in the Tanakh, gevurah average life is 70 years. If a person lives 80 years, gevurah is shmeinim shan. That means an intense life, a surge of life, bubbling with life. So Gevurah is not just negative, Gevurah is actually very positive. And that's what the sacrifices were about, and especially prayer, which is a substitute for sacrifice. Because prayer it's like fire. It's like you're going up. You're getting beyond your ego, and you generate an energy. You create a stirring. There's an energy, there's movement, there's change. Gevurah is where change happens. When there's fire, that's when you can mold things, that's when you can bend things, that's when you can shape things. When there's life, that's where change happens. Water is very cold, it doesn't change. That's from the top down. But from the bottom up, fire, it takes things apart. That's what causes change to happen. The reason why prayer is so powerful, and the sacrifices were so powerful. You offered the animal on the altar and the fire. You're elevating. It's an elevation. You're elevating. You're going up. You're getting out of yourself. You're changing. There's a tremendous, intense energy. It's like when you bounce something back, it's like the mirror. It's the power of a mirror. It's like bounces back. You create a covering, right? So you create a blockage. And then now I can see what's behind me. I don't have eyes behind me. Through the mirror, I can see my vision expanded. Now I can see what I can't see ordinarily. Now I can see what's even behind me. Like the light that bounces off, that bounces back, it's so much more powerful than the light that comes straight. The top of the mountain is colder than the valley, because the top of the mountain, the light is coming straight from the sun. But the warmth and the heat comes from the light bouncing back. So the light that bounces back from the bottom up, the fire, the gevurah, the service, our sacrifice and our service and our prayer and our reaching out and yearning for Hashem, this is what creates an atonement. This is the powerful force that has the power to create an atonement, to achieve an atonement, to be able to fix and mend and to change us. So that's why these sacrifices have to be in the north. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of sacrifice, the whole point of prayer. The gevurah, the strength, the reaching out to Hashem from the bottom up. It's our reaching out to Hashem. Okay, now he's going to break it down. It gets more specific. Because in the Kodshei Kodashim, you have different sacrifices. So first he starts out with the par, the bull, the sa'ir, and the goat, the he-goat, shel Yom Kippur. The bull was the sin offering that the high priest offered to achieve an atonement for himself and for the priest. And the goat, the he-goat, which was like the twin to the other he-goat. One he-goat was thrown off the mountain as the Azazel, and the other one was offered as a sacrifice, as a sin offering to atone for the sins of the entire Jewish people. And that was an essential part of the service of Yom Kippur, and it achieved a very powerful atonement. It atoned for all the sins of the Jewish people, and it removed the sin. It's so powerful, not that it achieves atonement for the Jews' sin. It removes the sin. When you sin, you create an energy. You create a negative energy. You create a reality. But the he-goat that was offered had the power to remove the sin itself. So he says, Shchitasan batzafin, you have to slaughter it in the northern side of the courtyard. V'kibul daman, and you have to receive the blood, b'klei sharis. Everything had to be done with a holy utensil. You can't just receive it with your hands. You have to receive it in a utensil, but a utensil that's sanctified. Even the slaughtering had to be done, was also done with a utensil. It's done with a knife that's sanctified. It's a holy knife that's sanctified, belongs to the temple. But he doesn't mention it because slaughtering, even if you slaughter with anything, you fulfill the obligation of slaughtering. It doesn't have to be a fancy knife. But to receive the blood, that you have to receive the blood. It has to be in a vessel. It has to be a holy vessel, b'klei shares, batzafin. So you have to receive the blood. The kohen who's standing has to be also standing on the northern side. And all of this is a deal breaker. It's not optional. It's not a suggestion. It would be nice if you slaughter it on the northern side. It would be nice if you receive the blood on the northern side of the courtyard. It would be nice if you stood on the northern side. No, these are all deal breakers. Otherwise, it's not a kosher sacrifice. Then they would take this blood that he received, and the high priest would then go into the Holy of Holies, and he would sprinkle it between the poles of the ark. This is when they had the ark. 30 years before the destruction of the first temple, King Yoshio hid the ark. And during the entire second temple period, They did not have the ark. The Holy of Holies was empty. But he stood in the place where there was an ark, and that's where he would sprinkle. So he would take the blood, dip it in, and he would sprinkle 8 times. First he would dip it in and throw it up. It doesn't mean he would throw it on the ark to make the ark dirty with blood. He means in front of the ark. He was standing facing the cover of the ark, on the level of covering the ark. And he would throw up his finger, and the blood would go up and then land on the floor in front of the ark, between the poles. Then he would take 7 times and he would throw it like this, downwards. Like make a row, a drop of blood. Altogether 8 drops of blood. So he had 4 different ways, the way they would sprinkle the blood. One is we're going to learn they actually threw it on the altar. Another one was with your finger you went and smeared it on the 4 corners, that we're going to learn. One is like here, drops of blood. Azoya, it just drops. And the other one is you just would pour it out. You wouldn't throw it, you would just pour it out on the wall of the altar. Like pour it down on the foundation of the altar. Just pour the blood out. So this was Hazoya, drops that he would sprinkle between the 2 poles. Then he would exit the Holy of Holies, and he would stand in the holiest, and he would face the curtain that separates between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. And again, he would repeat the same thing. 8 times, drops of blood. He would dip his finger and throw it up once, and would land, not that it has to land on the curtain, make the curtain dirty with blood, but in front of the curtain. All of it in front of the curtain, he would throw it up, and it would land on the floor right in front of the curtain, and then he would take it each dip, and 7 times. Again, it was like a row of 8 drops of blood. And then he would go to the golden altar. He went in twice. First, he went in to sprinkle the blood of the bull, and then he would go out and bring in the blood of the he-goat, and sprinkle the blood of the he-goat, both inside the Holy of Holies, in front of the ark, between the poles, and then on the outside, in front of the curtain, separating between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. Then he would mix the blood. What he would do is he would smear the blood in the 4 corners of the inner altar. The altar was made of gold. And then he would also pour it on the roof of the altar, the inner altar. Altogether, there were like 43 sprinklings. So he had 8, 4 times 8, 32. Then you had the 4 corners, that's 36. And then you had another 7 that he would sprinkle from the mixed blood. He would sprinkle on the roof of the inner altar. This was the only time that you smeared blood on the inner altar. Usually the inner altar, no sacrifices were allowed to be offered on the inner altar. That was exclusively for the outer altar. The inner altar was used every day for the incense, exclusively. There's a huge difference between the inner altar and the outer altar. The outer altar was primarily for animal sacrifices. The inner altar was for incense, not for animal sacrifice. And the difference is because the outer altar represents the outer, our consciousness, our outer consciousness, the outer heart, the outer level of the heart, which you have to deal with your animal soul and your ego soul and your natural soul, and you have to take the animal and you have to offer it and elevate it. The inner altar, the inner heart, it's not about elevating the world or refining the animal, elevating the animal, but it's about incense. Incense, as we learn, is about getting closer to Hashem, to deepen your relationship with Hashem. That inner relationship that you have with Hashem, that inner marriage and relationship you have with Hashem, to deepen your relationship with Hashem. Independent of the world around you. You're inside the temple. It's an inner altar. It's an altar made of gold. The outer altar was made of copper, and it was on the outside. Because you're dealing with the outside. You're dealing with your surface consciousness. You're dealing with the outside world, the reality of this world. And there it's a struggle, and there it's a conflict, and you have to wrestle with the animal inside of you, and you have to elevate it. But then there is a part of you that I'm not dealing with anything external. It's my inner relationship with Hashem. Where the world dissolves, the world ceases to exist, it's just about me and Hashem, and I'm just getting closer to Hashem and deepening my relationship with Hashem. The only exception was these sprinklings on Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, they would smear the blood on the altar of the bull offering and the he-goat. So the blood, they would they would do on the altar, in all four corners, and then 7 times on the roof of the altar. That was the only time that anything of the animal would even touch the altar. And then he says, Matona achas men ma'akavis. Even one, if you missed any of these 43 sprinklings, it's a deal breaker. You haven't fulfilled your obligation. Let's say the blood spilled out before I had a chance to do the sprinklings on the altar, to smear it on the altar, after I've done the sprinklings in the Holy of Holies, and after I've done it in front of the curtain. Then the blood spilled. I couldn't finish. You have to slaughter another bull, another he-goat, and finish where you left off, and do the sprinklings in the altar. It's a deal breaker. You must do all of these sprinklings. You can't even miss one. What do you do with the leftover blood? Shidei hadam, the leftover blood. Or as soon as you walked out of the temple, what's the first part of the altar that you encountered? It was the western side of the altar. That's what's facing you. That's the first thing you bump into. So right then you take the blood and you spill it out. This is the fourth way how you deal with the blood. You spill it. You don't throw it. You don't smear it. You don't sprinkle it. You just spill it out. And where do you spill it out? On Yesod. Yesod is the foundation. The foundation of the altar wasn't dug into the ground. It was like a platform. The altar was made up of 3 different parts. First you had the base, a platform. Then you had like an indent. And the platform did not extend outside of the altar, not on all 4 sides. It did not extend on the eastern side. It did not extend on the southern side, but it extended fully on the western side of the altar, and an amma, like a foot and a half, and it extended on the northern side. And then there was an indent. It went 1 amma onto the eastern side and 1 amma, a foot and a half, onto the southern side. But the rest, the platform wasn't jutting out from the rest of the altar on those sides. It was basically just. Then on top of it, you had a portion of the altar which was 5 amma, which is 7.5 feet, almost 8 feet. And then the third part of the altar was narrower or smaller than that. So it created a ledge. So therefore you were able to walk around the whole altar. And then on top of the altar, you had 4 corners jutting out. 4 corners. So from the floor all the way to the top, including the corners, was 10 amma, was like 15 feet. A little more than 15 feet. Height, from the floor all the way to the top. So the Yesod is the platform on the bottom, the foundation. So you would pour out the rest of the blood on the western side of the altar, facing as soon as you walked out of the temple. That's what you bumped into right away. The whole western side of the altar was right there in front of you with the foundation that jutted out, and that's where you would pour out the rest of the blood. What if you didn't? Let's say the blood spilled before you had a chance, or you forgot that you didn't do it. Doesn't matter. That's not a deal breaker. As long as you did the 43 sprinklings, if you didn't end up pouring the leftovers, it's leftovers. If you didn't end up pouring the leftovers, it's fine. You still have the atonement, mission accomplished, job well done. But initially you should take the blood and leftover blood and spill it out. So that's the first Mishnah. So that's category number 1. This is the Holy of Holies. This is like the holiest type of sin offering of the year. The holiest type of the bull of the high priest on Yom Kippur, and the he-goat that was offered as a sin offering on the high priest.